welcome to Life Interrupted. I'm Patricia Muller. Today, I want to talk about how our grief has an effect on our relationships. Grief is a selfish thing, not in a bad way. We grieve because we have lost someone. Grief is the body's way of showing that it hurts. Our life has been changed by someone we love not being around anymore. Not being able to share our life with that person any longer can make us feel empty and alone. Grief is also the inconvenience of losing a home or a car or a favorite stuffed animal. Grief shows up in many different ways and under many different circumstances. Everyone has experienced it at one time or another. Grief is there because we hurt. The person we have lost has gone on to better things. Grief is all of our thoughts and feelings concentrated on our hurt and pain. We tend to forget those around us are still here. In this episode, I want to talk about how our grief can affect our relationships. These relationships are those of anyone around us. It affects our familial relationships as well as friendships, work, coworkers, our peers, our church family, even the relationship with our pets. Let's first talk about how grief impacts our relationships in a negative way. Grief alters our availability. Grievers can withdraw and isolate themselves, causing loved ones to feel shut out or helpless. My support base would not let me isolate. At the time, I hated it because I just wanted to be left alone. But looking back, I am thankful that they didn't leave me alone. Their presence helped me to process my grief. Grief can cause relationships to become strained. Increased irritability, impatience, and decreased energy can make interacting with the grieving person emotionally exhausting for others. I didn't want to be a strain or drain on others. But in keeping things inside me, it was hard to process my grief. Find the right person to talk with. Talk to a counselor or find a grief support system. At the beginning, after we've lost a loved one, the people around us will come to our aid. They will help support us. They will be there when we need us. But after a little while, it could be days, it could be weeks, they move on with their lives. They keep going. And we are then left alone. And that's when things get really quiet. And that's when we need to find someone that we can talk to about it, who is not going to get tired of hearing it. Us continuing to talk about our grief, which is very valid, will start to exhaust them. And it could lead to some arguments or fights or just a loss of friendships if we continue to allow our grief to be expressed. We have to express it, so find a support group. Find someone else who has grieved and knows and understands and will be there to talk to you. Grief can also cause a shift in dynamics. The new self that emerges from loss may no longer align with old friends and routines, causing relationships to shift and fade. I experienced this when a couple I know lost a child. They went from being warm and welcoming to being completely shut off. They went through their daily rituals of going to their jobs, taking care of their other children, but it was apparent that they had changed. That change has affected all areas of their lives. There are no more warm feelings or feelings of being welcome with them. Because of their grief, which is completely understandable, our friendship has changed. I met with them to talk about how our friendship had changed. They explained their grief, and I had to accept that change. We are still friends, but the depth of that relationship is no longer there. And that's okay. They need to process, and I need to let them process in their own way and in their own time. Grief can also cause uncomfortable interactions. Others may feel awkward and avoid the griever. or try to rush the grieving process, creating a sense of disconnection. We had a friend at church who lost a husband. After a couple of years after his death, a friend of hers asked, "When are you going to get over that?" The person who spoke those words did not clearly understand the depth of the griever's pain. The griever's pain was making the outside person feel uncomfortable. Now, let's talk about how grief can have an impact on family dynamics. Everyone grieves differently, which can lead to conflict, misunderstandings, or feelings that one person's pain is too much. We've all seen this in movies where a couple has lost a child. One parent will stay home and cry while the other is out posting flyers looking for their lost child. It is important at those times to try to understand that they are both grieving, but in their own unique ways. They are trying to cope with that loss. A great example of this is the show 6 Feet Under. This is a show about a family who owns a funeral home. It shows their grief as they try to cope with their own loss, while also helping others navigate theirs. Grief can also cause family roles to change. Families may struggle as roles are forced to change, requiring adaptation to a new family structure. I know with my own loss, my daughters had to step up and become the adult as I dealt with the loss of my husband. My daughter said after my husband died, "I feel like my world has been blown apart and put together wrong." It did feel that way because things had changed, roles had changed, and responsibilities had changed. Grief has an impact on our children. Children observe how adults manage grief, learning to either open up or repress their own emotions based on their environment. Now, let's talk about the positive impacts and connections that come from grief. Grief can deepen bonds. For some, grief brings the chance for deeper, more authentic connections, as superficial conversations are replaced by desire for true support. I know that I have formed some very deep bonds with other grievers because of my own grief. I was able to talk to those other grievers in deep ways that someone else could not, and that has formed some strong bonds. Grief can increase sympathy. Witnessing a loved one's pain can increase empathy in friends and family, strengthening their desire to support. One of the things I love about my marriage is that my husband and I know that we are free to talk about our deceased spouses. We both know that grieving is a lifetime thing, so there is no time in which we won't talk about our late spouses. That is both liberating and comforting, knowing that there is someone to always talk to and that they will listen and not judge. So, how do we manage the impact of our grief on our relationships? We need to communicate our needs. Openly tell people what you need, whether it's space or companionship. It helps them to support you, and it takes away that feeling of awkwardness. I had a friend who lost a husband. One night I dreamed about him, and I told her about it. I was hesitant to say anything because I thought it would upset her, but she was thankful that I told her. It let her know how much of an impact he had on our lives, and that was comforting for her. Allow yourself to be supported. Accepting help rather than isolating allows loved ones to feel involved and connected. After my late husband's funeral, one of my daughter's friends was going to drive back home, which was about a 4-hour drive. It was already late, so I invited her to spend the night at my house. She said she didn't want to impose, but I told her it would be good to have someone else in the house with me. It was nice having her there. We even went for breakfast the next day before she headed back home. One of my daughters, after my husband died, came over every day for a week and stayed several hours just so I wouldn't be left alone. Another of my daughters brought me food every day. Even though I wasn't hungry, I ate the food she brought because, one, I knew I needed to eat, and two, because she drove several miles to do this for me. Those are things I will always remember and will always be very appreciative that they did those. They took time out of their own lives to do this for me. Then we need to practice self-compassion. Acknowledging that your changed behavior is temporary can ease the guilt of how your grief impacts others. And if your grief has permanently altered you, be open about it. Tell people how your grief has changed you. Being open about it lets others understand your new self, and it can help to allow others to accept their own changes if they have gone through a loss. I found a new friend once during vacation. I was waiting in line for something, and the person in front of me and I started talking. I mentioned that I had lost a husband, and she shared her own story of loss. We ended up talking about it in depth and crying together. Her husband saw us crying, and we explained why we were crying. He thanked me for talking with her. He was lost as how to help her process her grief. We are still friends to this day. Grief is such a complex and complicated thing that can be very difficult to navigate, especially for those on the outside. Don't ever downgrade your grief to accommodate those around you. Don't take your pain out on those around you either. We all grieve in different ways, and you have to figure out your own process. Remember to 1. Journal about it. Write down your feelings. 2. Talk to someone. Explain what's going on. And give yourself time to process that grief. It's not going to be an easy road. It's not going to be a fun road. But it needs to be processed if you're going to heal correctly, properly. Thank you for joining me. In my next episode, we will talk about what not to say to a grieving person. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a great evening.